What's up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast on this Wednesday, December 3rd. The Bills getting back after it down in Orchard Park today. Preparations have begun. They held a walkthrough practice. A lot of interesting injury developments today that we're going to kind of get into, talk about what it means. There's a couple on both sides of the ball that I think are going to have an impact over the next not only week here, but the next couple weeks with the New England Patriots on the horizon. The last ditch effort for the Bills to try to maybe make a run at the division. We'll get into all of those things on this episode of Shout. And as always, if you're part of the show, if you want to, if you have something you want to specifically to talk about, the comment section is open on Facebook, on X, and right here on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We really appreciate that. Ryan Talbot, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Better than a lot of the Bills on that injury report. That's for sure there, Mr. Parrino.
Yeah, and I think this was the way that it was trending with Bosa. So I'm not very surprised about the fact today that Sean McDermott said he's going to be a week-to-week kind of injury. And week-to-week can mean a number of different things. We've seen guys come back pretty early off of a week-to-week designation, and then we've seen it drag 3 to 4 to 5 weeks. And that's what Sean McDermott said is kind of the window. Initially, they're hoping that he's going to be back on the shorter end of that window. But that's what I wanted to talk about with Bosa, because to me, you have to treat this with kid gloves because he has dealt with soft tissue injuries in the past. He's played through them. I was talking to our good buddy Kyle Trimble over at Banged Up Bills. He does a great job. Follow him on all the social media platforms. And I was just talking to, because he's usually got a really good feel for guys' injury histories. When we were talking about Bosa, he said he dealt with something similar to this in 2023, where he played through a hamstring injury, then ended up getting it ended up getting worse, and it affected him. You don't want to be in that situation. So as much as it hurts you in the meantime, the Bills are sitting in a pretty good spot, even without Joey Bosa over the course of the next 5 games. You think the Bills should be able to win 3 of those 5 and get themselves a playoff spot at the very least. You need Joey Bosa healthy for the playoffs. So I think this is going to be something where, sure, Sean McDermott maybe gives a little hope that he could be ready for the Patriots game, but I'd also not want to rush it. The other side of this, though, Ryan, is the Bills have not treated Joey Bosa with kid gloves this year. He's played 65% of the snaps, the most he's played in a season since 2021. It feels like they've been comfortable with putting a ton on his plate. So if you were to sell me on the story that he's going to return for the Patriots game in a little bit less than 2 weeks from now, I believe you, because the Bills have kind of let him go out there and rip it.
Yeah, I'm not selling you on that, though. Slow play this. Let the guy get healthy. It's that simple. Bosa, when healthy, is a dynamic pass rusher that can make big plays, force bad throws, force turnovers, as we saw against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A Bosa at less than 100% is a different matter. And we saw that, with the wrist injury, with the club on the hand, whatever, the hand injury, I guess, not as effective, obviously, in different body parts in this case. But if you can't, get off the blocks as quickly as normal because of this injury, there's no point in having him out there. I think in terms of the snap share and the fact that the Bills haven't been treating him with kid gloves, it had a lot to do with the injuries that they've dealt with this season. This has just been an injury-plagued Bills season in general, across the board, positions, you name it. So I think some injuries have boosted him up. I think the first 6 weeks, when you were dealing with the suspensions, that lifted up his snap count a little bit. Obviously, losing guys to injury since then doesn't help. So the Bills haven't treated him like he's an injury-prone player, which, unfortunately he is. But at the same time, at this point, you're thinking playoffs, big picture, slow play it, let him get healthy for the playoffs.
This might have been an opportunity for a young player like Landon Jackson, who's been out for the last 4 weeks with the torn PCL, MCL. He's, probably not going to be a part of this picture for the rest of the season. You have Michael Hoyt, who tore his Achilles, 2 guys that were expected, at least, especially Hoyt, to be in the mix and probably could have helped mitigate the loss of a player like Joey Bosa. So now we turn our attention to who is going to be the guy that gets to get elevated into this, a potential role this weekend against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, which, I guess it's similar in a way. Shaq Lawson and Morgan Fox are the 2 practice squad guys. Andre Jones, is it?
Andre Jones Jr., yep.
they signed him back to the practice squad, so he can maybe be in the mix as well. I have a feeling it's probably going to be more Morgan Fox. He's been in the building the longest. I think maybe Andre Jones might have been here a little bit sooner, but they brought in Morgan Fox for a reason. The question that's been asked here in the chat is Morgan Fox game imitating Michael Hoyt's role? And that's a really interesting question, because if you remember the podcast when they signed Morgan Fox, we talked about he played the Hoyt role in LA before Hoyt even got to LA.
It was the Morgan Fox role.
Exactly. Yeah. It was the Morgan Fox role before, Michael Hoyt kind of took over, was the younger player. They moved off of Fox. He ended up going to Carolina, actually played with Shaq Thompson a little bit. So they're going to ask him to come in here, and you'll see how much he has left. You also have Shaq Lawson. It wouldn't surprise me if both of those guys are elevated this weekend. We'll get to the Dalton Kincaid situation in a moment. But how do you kind of view this room without Joey Bosa? Because the Bills have had to ask rookie defensive tackle at times, TJ Sanders, to play on the outside. I don't know if that's necessarily where you want him long-term, but in a pinch, you might have to lean into that once again this week.
Yeah. How do I view the room? It's subpar. I mean, injuries have created a lot of issues. Greg Rousseau, as good as he's been in run defense, has not been a difference maker in terms of getting after the quarterback. AJ Epinesa has just been, like much of his career, very hit and miss, very hot and cold. And then Javon Solomon is his own type of player off the edge. He's still young. He's not making much of an impact at this point. So now you do have to kind of look at what you have waiting in the wings on the practice squad. And to me, it's Morgan Fox. At the highest point, he should definitely be it. And then everyone else underneath that. No offense to Shaq Lawson. I know he knows the system, but he just got back here. Didn't make much of an impact last year when he was signed, I believe, by the Carolina Panthers for a very short period of time. So it's been a little bit since he's done much. Fox at least has some pretty good tape in the last few seasons where he can come in here. He can play off the edge on obvious pass rushing downs. You can kick him inside. Now that he's going to leapfrog other defensive tackles that this team has that have been performing and playing pretty well, but he at least has that versatility and flexibility, Matt. And, this team needs all the help that they can get. And speaking of help, Matt, in December at Tops, it's holiday helper time. I don't know if you've seen this.
Woo!
Yeah. Between now and Christmas Eve, Tops is making holidays easier, merrier, and more affordable. Tops Holiday Helper brings you 25 days of inspiration to simplify your season, from quick, entertaining ideas and decorating hacks to thoughtful gift solutions. Each day reveals a new helper paired with an e-coupon savings on holiday must-haves. Because the best holidays aren't just joyful, they're stress-free too. Head over to topsmarkets.com/holiday helper.
Listen, I think it's going to be Fox, but to me, like, the one thing I will give Shaq Lawson is that there is a juice factor that he brings on the sideline, that if you elevate him, his versatility to go inside and outside, I think that that's something, at least. I know Corey is in the comments here saying if Shaq Lawson's up, you're in trouble. I think it gives you a baseline level of production, and the Bills are going to have to stop the run in this game too. I mean, Chase Brown has been getting after it this season at times. From an EPA per rush perspective, the Cincinnati Bengals have been pretty good. And the other thing on Shaq Lawson, Ryan, he is a fan favorite. I mean, people love him. Speaking of fan favorites, this season, let us do the cooking, and you'll be the MVP with ready-to-serve fan favorites. Visit takeoutmeals.topsmarkets.com and elevate your food game with our great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizzas, sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Save time and easily shop with the convenience of no-fee pickup on all your game day deals. There's no service fees, no tips, just the best deals in town. Listen, you've been showing me up lately, Talbot. So I had to bring some fire with the transition game.
I love
there.
it.
And so I
loved it. Brought a smile to my face. I knew exactly what you were doing. So,
Jason says that felt forced. Come on, Jason.
I disagree.
So much thought and effort into that one. All right. Anyway, let's get to Dalton Kincaid, because this was eye-popping to me a little bit today. He's been on the injury report for almost a month. He's missed 3 straight games with a hamstring injury. And all of a sudden, the first injury report of the week comes out today. He was limited in practice, which is good. He had 2 limited days of practice last week. It seems like he's trending in a good direction. But here's the thing. Like, you're going to pop up on the injury report now with a knee designation as well. To me, that's concerning, Ryan. This is a guy that last season had a knee injury that he played through, obviously affected him down the stretch. He didn't want to use it as an excuse, but talked about it, really impacting him in the playoffs. Now, I'm starting to think, even if he's able to come back this weekend against the Cincinnati Bengals, is this something that's kind of creeping up again? Is something that he's going to have to play through? It's a concerning update because against the Bengals or any team, but specifically this week against the Bengals, which this game could very well turn into a shootout, you need to get your passing game going. And to me, the key to unlocking this passing game in 2025 post-trade deadline, it's not Brandon Cooks, it's Dalton Kincaid. And I'm worried about what this thing is going to look like over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks if you're dealing with another nagging injury if you're Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, this is beyond worrisome. This is, having another ailment listed in addition to what you're currently dealing with. Going into, I agree, this has all the makings of a shootout, but it can't be a shootout if you don't have your bullets, Matt. And right now, this passing game already looks broken. You don't have Dalton Kincaid potentially in this matchup. And then what are you going to do? You can try to control the clock like you did last week against the Steelers, hold the ball for 40-plus minutes. But with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, potentially T. Higgins, concussion protocol, we'll see on that. There's so much ability to move the ball through the air. They have Chase Brown on the ground. This Bills defense, as good as they were last week against Pittsburgh, as good as they were in the second half against Houston, I need to see it against a high-flying passing attack like what we're going to see from Cincinnati this weekend. Until then, I have the feelings that this can be a high-scoring game, at least on Cincinnati's part, and Buffalo's going to have to match it, and I worry if they're going to be able to do so if Kincaid can't play.
If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We really appreciate your support this holiday season as we make the climb to 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. We really appreciate everybody making us a part of your Bills content viewing or listening experience. The thing about Kincaid when he's out of the lineup, Ryan, is it changes the like Dawson Knox is a capable receiver, but it feels like we're so far removed from him having the kind of impact in the passing game that he had that helped him, get the extension that's been very much criticized over the last couple of years. The Bills using a big chunk of their salary cap space on a backup player at this point in his career, although he's oftentimes vaulted into a starting role because of Kincaid's injury history. You look over the course of the season, and I know everybody eats, but Dawson Knox had an opportunity this season to really make an impact because of all of the games that Kincaid has missed. He's never had a game this season where he's been targeted more than 5 times. He has actually had only one game where he had 5 targets. He's had 2 games with 0 targets. His season high in receiving was 37 yards. He's got 1 touchdown on the year. Do you see a path to him having an impactful performance? And what do you think has held him back from taking advantage of opportunity? Is it just the identity of the team? Is it a Dawson Knox specific problem? Because he has not really been a big part of what they do in the passing game.
No, and I don't see a path for him being, turning the time back to when he was having these impact games here and there. It was never a consistent deal, but there was a period of time before Dalton Kincaid, obviously, where you'd get a big game or two out of Dawson Knox. A regular season game against the Chiefs comes to mind where he got behind the defense a few times and had some big plays there. But it's so sporadic. And at this point, I think it's a variety of things. One, your identity right now this season is more of a running first team, a run first team. James Cook is dynamic. You want to get him involved, get the ball in his hands as much as possible. You're having issues with your offense, with the route trees, with the predictability of it. And I don't think that helps a player like Dawson Knox either. And it's funny on the play that Josh Allen threw the touchdown to Keon Coleman. Fun play to watch back, the pump fake, the getting the guy in the air, waiting another split second and throwing it to Keon Coleman. If he had looked slightly to his left, you had Dawson Knox wide open, no one in his vicinity. So it could also be where he is on the quarterback reads. You got quarterbacks go 1 through 4, 1 through 5 on their reads, and he might just be buried on that area. He blocks well, so it's not an issue where he can't be out there to block, but you can also argue that Jackson Hawes is already significantly better as a blocking option, so that kind of keeps him off the field at times. There's so many reasons why he hasn't been a factor, but I just can't see it all of a sudden changing either this weekend, despite the fact that I think he is still a highly athletic tight end and could maybe be a mismatch at times if you utilized him correctly.
This is a good question here, but I want to get to it. But before we move off of Knox, I mean, the stats are alarming when you look at it. I mean, you take his first 4 seasons, and he put together 20 touchdowns in 4 seasons. I mean, he averaged well over 12 yards per carry or per reception in those first 4 seasons. Since Kincaid showed up, 4 touchdowns in 2.5 seasons. It's just been a fall off of epic proportion, almost so much that I think there's probably a little bit of a personal identity crisis. Like, he's been turned into such a block first tight end, which, he wasn't drafted necessarily to be. I mean, his athletic tools were like the really big selling point. I mean, early in his career, remember, he was on, the Kyle Brandt show a couple of times. He was a playmaker in the offense. So it's been quite a fall off for Dawson Knox, but depending on what's going on with Kincaid, they might need him to step up. Whiskey asks, how difficult is it to ask questions during such a sensitive season? I'd imagine with all the issues, reporters are walking on eggshells. I think it's a good question. I mean, inside football kind of question, right? Like, what's it like being a reporter in a press conference? I don't think it's necessarily difficult. And I'd argue, Tori came in here on YouTube and said local media is soft, doesn't ask any tough questions. If you're saying that, I don't think you've been watching. I think there's been plenty of testy exchanges with the coach, with the quarterback, with Keon Coleman over the course of the last month. There have been some press conferences where tough questions have been asked, and I don't think anybody's dancing around the topic either. I mean, when Keon Coleman was benched, I came out and specifically asked Sean McDermott about what was going on with everything. It wasn't, a backdoor into the question. It was direct. Like, are you satisfied with what you're getting from Keon Coleman? I think that, that I'm kind of paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact question, but you have to. It's part of the job. You have to ask straight, direct questions. But I also think, like, we got to use a little bit of perspective here. Like, somebody mentioned if this was New York media. New York media they're great, right? There's a lot of heavy hitters, hard hitters in both of those markets to cover the Jets, the Giants, the Yankees, the Rangers, all those different teams. But most New York football reporters are covering horrible
train wrecks.
Like absolute organizational meltdowns. I get having your issues with Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane. We could sit here and talk about it on the podcast. It's all that is fair, but let's not sit here and act that this hasn't been a super successful organization since these two guys showed up, and they're on the verge of going to the playoffs. We'll see how the next couple of weeks goes, and they're not eliminated from the division yet, as far-fetched as that might seem at this point. They're probably going to go to the division for every season that Sean McDermott has been here, except for one. It's a pretty good run, and he has some pretty good numbers too. But in terms of asking tough questions, sure, sometimes it's awkward, but it's part of the job.
100% part of the job. And when you look at this, though, it is the success. And we have definitely on this podcast criticized Brandon Beane for some of the extensions that he has made as of late, the cap situation, the moves, you name it. But, at the same time, this is a team, as you mentioned, in the contention for the playoffs once again. There's stuff that he has done extremely well. He extending Josh Allen again, knowing that in due time that's going to be a deal for this team. The offensive line depth on this team, coming off of a win where you had 2 backup tackles in Ryan Vandermark and Alec Anderson, who came in and played at an extremely high level. He built up that offensive line from the starters to the depth in terms of the contracts, the drafting, etc., the UDFAs, you name it. So where they're at right now, it's a frustrating season because I think a lot of Bills fans saw a path to the 1 seed in a weak AFC, and it hasn't worked out that way. But in the grand scheme of things, this is still a successful season. If they get to the playoffs, and especially if they win a few games come playoff time, because at the end of the day, there's only so many teams that get to the dance. And if the Bills can at least get there, they can get hot at the right time.
Question here in the comments about packaging Keon Coleman and Kincaid for Justin Jefferson.
How hard would the Minnesota Vikings laugh at that offer?
They probably would. It would definitely require some draft picks for sure. But listen, the issue with the Jefferson trade is this isn't the Diggs trade from a couple years ago, Ryan. Like, to trade him this offseason, the dead cap hit that the Minnesota Vikings would have to take. And listen, things are going pretty poorly there. Like, it's probably going to go pretty poorly there over the next month. Who knows where things sit in March, and maybe there is some movement. It would come trading him before June 1st this offseason, Justin Jefferson, would come with an $72 million dead cap hit from the Minnesota Vikings. And that's just, listen, it's not impossible. Teams have taken on that kind of astronomical number in the past, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are taking big hits to get rid of guys. But that is a massive number that's going to be sitting on your salary cap for the next, 2-3 seasons.
Yeah, it doesn't seem realistic. And again, I pitched some younger players, Marvin Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze, players that are, fresh in this league, but maybe not being utilized properly by their teams. The Bears obviously are having a very successful season. I don't know if they'd be willing to move him. Harrison's family has had some frustration with how he's being used in Arizona. I think the Bills will turn over every stone possible, including making calls on players like Jefferson, knowing full well that the team in Minnesota, in this case, is going to say, yeah, no, thank you. We're not looking to move him whatsoever. And there's going to be other players of that caliber, too, where they get shut down. But all you need is one yes from a team where then maybe the ball gets rolling. And if they don't have success there, maybe this is the year they go all in on the draft on a guy and they move up to get someone. There's multiple names that are going to be drafted in the first round or maybe early in the second round that the Bills could be in play for once again that I think could be good fits, but there's always the roll of the dice in terms of what the ceilings of these players are and whether they can ever become a superstar come, entering the NFL.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot to dig into and potential options for the Bills at wide receiver this offseason. Before we can, we got a super chat here.
Yes.
Did the Patriots take the Bills organization by surprise? I mean, I think that they took the league by surprise to a degree. I mean, when you run off 10 wins in a row, schedule, easy schedule, all that kind of baked in, that's still something I don't think anybody was predicting. I think people thought that they were going to be a factor in the division. I thought that a lot of people thought they were going to be a playoff team, and Drake May had really good moments as a rookie, and you add Vrabel into the mix, who's a career competent coach. Like, that's another thing that sometimes people forget. Like, just adding competency at the head coaching position changes so much potentially for an organization. It's why things haven't gone well in Miami and things haven't gone well in New York. But you take what Mike Vrabel did in Tennessee, and I know it didn't maybe end well there, and he hasn't had a lot of success in the playoffs. Never had a quarterback there. That probably played into it. But he is a really solid, maybe above average coach. We'll see where things end this season. But I think adding all those things into the mix, it feels like they've added a lot of really good pieces. I don't think they necessarily snuck up on the Bills, though, Ryan.
No, I agree with that. I think a lot of people had them projected as a potential playoff team this year. We both had them as the number 2 team in the division, if I remember correctly, going into the season. And they're going to leapfrog the Bills, it seems, and be the number 1 team in the division. But I think a lot of people had them being in the mix at least this year and maybe being where they are now next year. Now, that being said, I am skeptical of them because of their historically soft schedule. I want to see what this looks like next year when they play a first place schedule, a much more difficult schedule, which it will be. But kudos to them for rattling off all these wins in a row, defeating the teams that they're supposed to defeat for the most part. They obviously had some hiccups in week 1 against the Raiders, which if they played that game now or any week from now to the end of the year, I would 100% expect the Patriots to win in a landslide. So some of these losses are a little bit baffling, but for the most part, they've done their job against the teams they're supposed to beat.
All right, I want to see if I can pull up this video clip. I want to talk about it for a minute. What do you think about where the Miami Dolphins are? This could be a good segue here before we get out of the AFC East, because they're sitting there at 5 wins. I think they have a really easy schedule the rest of the way. I think they play the Patriots maybe in the final week, which with how things are going, all these teams are set up. We talked about it on the show yesterday with Josh and Carl. Like, these teams are going to be beating each other up. If Miami keeps winning, that potentially they could be playing the Patriots in week 18 for a playoff spot, like maybe the 7th playoff spot. Where are you at with Miami, and what do you think is going to happen there leadership wise this offseason?
I think they're going to slip up at some point before the end of the year, and they're going to fall out of the playoff picture. They're not going to end up making it, despite this recent streak of wins. And to me, if I'm a Bills fan, I'm loving what I'm seeing right now in Miami, minus the head-to-head game in which Miami won, because they played the pick these last few weeks in this upcoming draft class the way that they've been winning. This reminds me a lot of the Bills teams from the drought years, where they were never good enough to make the playoffs, but they were never bad enough to get that difference maker franchise guy with a top 3 to 5 pick. And this is exactly where I think they're going to be. They're going to end up with anywhere from maybe 7 to 9 wins, and I don't think 9 wins cuts it come playoff time this year, in my opinion. So it's a feel-good story in terms of how they've turned things around. I think it might have saved Mike McDaniel's job. But at the same time, there's going to be a new GM there, and the new GM might be able to have the decision to keep him or not.
Good stuff. I agree with you too. And I also think it'll come down to who are the options. Like, one very interesting idea would be if Mike Tomlin does move off of the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it's his own decision or somebody else. I mean, it's probably headed towards a divorce when you have an entire stadium chanting to fire the coach in a late season game. But I think that would be an interesting addition. But outside of that, like, who are the top candidates that are you going to go out and get one of the latest versions of Mike McDaniel to come in and do the exact same thing? I think it's more about moving. And I'm not a big fan of Mike McDaniel, right? I've been critical of him on the show, going back to that appearance on Hard Knocks. But I do think he deserves credit for what he's done this season and what has been kind of like a, shit show, for lack of a better term. Like that organization has been a mess. I mean, the Greer situation, Tyreek going out, all these different things that have kind of been in play. And I think a very limited quarterback. I think it's more going to be about the transition plan out of Tua Tagovailoa more so than it is what's going on at the head coach position. Now, I have this video pulled up, Ryan. Have you seen this?
Maybe. I've seen a few of these Cam Newton videos in the last few days, so this might be one of them.
All right, let's play this one, and I want to talk about it and get your reaction.
Folks ain't gonna keep being patient with you. That playful person that the Buffalo City by storm in his first interview, and he sat down and was like, "Yeah, I love cookies," and he had the whole that was all cool. But we give that grace to young players. Big dog, you supposed to be our number one.
Come on now.
And you're playing like a bum.
Bet you better catch that.
I bet you better start doing your job.
Okay. So initial thoughts there. There's a lot to kind of dig into. First and foremost, I want to ask a question because I think this is the perception around the league.
Right.
And even based on Steve Smith's comments about him a couple of weeks ago, I don't necessarily think the Bills, and maybe this is a problem that they didn't do this, I never gotten the sense that they drafted him to be a number one wide receiver. As a matter of fact, everything the Bills have done since they've drafted Keon Coleman has been running away from the idea of even needing or wanting a wide receiver one. So I think to start with, that comment from Cam is really unfair for a player that's really not in a situation or given an opportunity to be a one. And also, like, you take Drake London, who was drafted in the first round and was immediately placed in the role that everybody said he should be, a big slot in the league. He's going to line up inside quite a bit. He's going to kind of work on his game over the course of a couple of seasons. I mean, it didn't go well for Drake London in year one. Like, people weren't talking about him around the league. I've been critical of Keon Coleman, but I think this is a little bit unfair when people are kind of coming out and acting like he landed in a spot where he'd even be able to be a wide receiver one right now. It says nobody in this offense is going to be a wide receiver one.
No, it's the whole everyone eats mentality. And maybe that mentality changes if you were to get a difference maker. But the Bills never thought that Keon Coleman was going to be this difference maker, like they ended up getting the premier receiver in the draft. None of that happened. They moved down multiple times, in fact, in that draft, and let other teams draft wide receivers in front. they were looking for an X receiver, and they felt he fit that prototype, but they have never come out and said, this guy's going to be our wide receiver number one. We know that in terms of the pass catchers, the wide receivers purely, Khalil Shakir has the most chemistry with Josh Allen. And although it hasn't always looked like that this season in terms of his involvement, he is still always going to be heavily factored in. They've gone out in free agency and they've paid decent money for guys. Curtis Samuel hasn't worked out, but they paid him $8 million a year on average. Joshua Palmer, year one, $13 million on average. That's not like a player that they expect to be sitting there far down on the depth chart. They were going to be in the mix. So they're bringing in different flavors. And unfortunately, a lot of these flavors haven't been working this year, at least. Palmer is going to have another opportunity, you would think, later this year, next year as well, to prove himself. But at no point has Keon Coleman ever been thought of as the number one receiver for this team since, being drafted. He had a really good training camp, and we talked about maybe him getting a much bigger role than we were anticipating, but that hasn't played out either.
I also think saying that he's playing like a bum, and I know like he's like a talking head, right? So a lot of it is bluster, a lot of it is over the top. Has Keon Coleman had a great season by any statistical measure? No. But I mean, I do want to sit here and look at the last 3 weeks in a season where they're looking for guys to step up and make plays. He made a big play in the Miami game. He went on and got benched after that for 2 weeks. That's part of the conversation. But he comes back on a fourth down, got to have it play, and it comes up with a touchdown grab as well. So, I think that there is still runway to a positive end to the season for Keon Coleman in this offense. Because if you look around this receiving room right now, and I'll include Dalton Kincaid in this mix, guys can't stay on the field. And that's one thing that Keon Coleman has consistently been able to do since the Bills drafted him. He's a young player. He's athletic. He has been available, from a physical perspective. Obviously, he's gotten into some off the field issues that have kept him from playing. But I think this is a huge stretch for Keon Coleman down the stretch of the season that can maybe change the narrative on him a little bit going into the offseason. And I think if I was Sean McDermott, that's what I'd be sitting down with Keon Coleman and emphasizing. Like, there's a huge opportunity for you to maybe, take the ball and run with it a little bit, because Josh Palmer, this ankle issue, that's also something we haven't hit on the show yet. Sean McDermott said he's in a really bad place right now with where basically re-aggravating the injury, something he's been dealing with, trying to play through, probably came back a little bit too early. I saw Chargers fans on social media talking about welcome to the Josh Palmer experience. This is something that, they've dealt with in LA the last couple of years. And, if we're talking about Brandon Beane and being critical of him, this is another guy on the heels of the Dalton Kincaid experiment with the inability to stay healthy, to now bring in another guy that you're giving $8-9 million a season to that has a history of not being able to get on the field. He deserves a lot of criticism on that level as well. But Keon specifically, I'm not writing him off and saying that he can't have some kind of positive end of the season and push into the playoffs.
I don't disagree with that. I don't know if he's going to be a factor between the 20s, but I think in the red zone, that is where he can really build on the end of the season, add some more touchdowns. If he can finish the year, I'm not saying double digits, but, if he can be the team's leading scorer and especially make his presence known in the red zone, give him some opportunities to win some one-on-one matchups, not just, I don't want to call it a broken play because it wasn't a broken play, but the Josh Allen extending the play type of things, but give him some real opportunities to prove himself with a jump ball situation, back shoulder, whatever the case may be. And kind of end on a positive note this season with something like that. I think that's very realistic. I think, again, it goes back to the routes that are being run. They're very predictable as is. You throw in someone that doesn't separate well on their own. It's going to be tough for him to make an impact between the 20s, but on the outside or in the red zone, I think that can be his bread and butter.
He's had 4 touchdowns this season. He had 57 targets last year. He caught 29 balls and had 556 yards receiving with the 4 touchdowns. This year, 52 targets. So he's going to probably end up with, I'd say, somewhere around 70-ish targets. He's got 5 more catches right now, but he's dramatically under his last year yardage total.
Yeah.
So he had a little bit more explosiveness to his game a year ago. And I think that part of that is baked into the offense and how their identity has been undergoing this shift over the course of the last 2 seasons, and they're a very run-heavy team, and a lot of it is like short slants, short like plays in the short game. And that could be something that Joe Brady, I think, should be tasked with trying to unlock, and Keon could be a part of it.
Yeah, he had a big gain on a few quick slants last year, and they tried to throw him 1 or 2. I believe it was in this Pittsburgh game. But they've tried to throw a few of them. Some haven't necessarily landed, or he dropped one. One was a very short reception that he was tackled immediately. There was the 4th down play last year against Houston where he broke the initial tackle on the play and went the distance. So he did have some longer touchdowns last year where he was able to break some tackles and get by a defender. Just really hasn't worked out that way this year.
One of our regulars in the YouTube comments, Jim, if Bean doesn't draft a speedy wide receiver in the 1st round in next year's draft, I'm going to the Amtrak station here in North Carolina, riding to Buffalo and telling Terry Pagula to let him go. Boom, nailed it. The transition was phenomenal. And right now, have you make memories this holiday season? Got a small dog or cat? Fluffy or Fido can travel with you on Amtrak. Or maybe you want to go to a Bills game and you want to get to town to see the Bills play one of their final games at Highmark Stadium. Amtrak gets you right into downtown Buffalo, just a short ride share from the stadium. No middle seats, a generous luggage policy, free Wi-Fi, and kids ride 50% off. Head over to Amtrak.com for more details. Jim, thank you for that phenomenal transition. All right, Ryan, final thought. We'll be back with a preview show on Friday. What do you got?
Yeah, final thought. Join us December 18th at the New York Rec and Social Club. Another live show that we have on the horizon coming up here soon. Inside the beautiful Turning Stone Resort and Casino. They have awesome Christmas displays. The gingerbread houses lit up outside. So come check all that out. Come check out a live episode of Shout, as we'll be talking about Buffalo's late season push for the playoffs.
Great stuff as always, my friend. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. Big game coming up on Sunday. We'll have you covered here on Shout. Take care, everybody.